You know what's frustrating about most backyard gardeners? They keep dumping chemical fertilizers into their soil thinking more is better. The result? Soil that looks full but acts dead. Roots barely grow, microbial life is stagnant, and plants get weaker instead of stronger. I've spent years testing this in raised beds, backyard plots, and even hydroponic systems, and I can tell you, if your soil feels flat, your plants will show it in size, taste, and resilience. Today, I'm sharing a method that Korean gardeners have used for decades that changes everything. And yes, it's something you can do right in your backyard without buying expensive products. Before we dive in, if you want more tested, practical garden hacks, hit subscribe now. This channel is built for serious gardeners who want results, not fluff. The problem with fertilizers is most people don't understand what they're actually feeding. Let's get one thing straight. Chemical fertilizers feed plants, not the soil. That means while your leaves might turn green fast, your soil biology is starving. Earthworms disappear, beneficial microbes slow down, and root systems don't develop deep enough to access nutrients naturally. I see it all the time. Perfectly fertilized tomato plants that produce a few pounds of fruit per plant instead of dozens. That's not a genetics problem, that's soil life dying. The method I'm about to show you flips that dynamic, making your soil a thriving ecosystem instead of a nutrient dumping ground. What Korean gardeners are quietly doing that's changing the game. In Korea, there's a technique called Jangsu soil conditioning. Essentially, it's fermenting simple, natural materials to create a living, potent soil amendment. Unlike compost that takes months to mature, this method accelerates microbial growth and supercharges soil activity in just a few weeks. I've adapted it for backyard gardeners, raised beds, and even small hydroponic reservoirs. You don't need exotic ingredients, just things you can find in your kitchen or local market. Rice, soybean meal, and a few natural minerals are enough to start. You need to understand ratios because they make or break results. If you throw these ingredients together haphazardly, you're wasting time. The standard Korean ratio I use is roughly 2 parts rice, 1 part soybean meal, and half a part mineral powder. For a small raised bed, that's about a cup of rice, half a cup of soybean meal, and 2 tablespoons of crushed rock dust or basalt powder. Mix those in a container with water to cover, then cover loosely with a breathable lid. Let it ferment for 7 to 10 days, stirring once or twice. You're looking for a pleasant, earthy smell, not anything sour or ammonia heavy. This creates a concentrated microbial starter, loaded with bacteria and fungi ready to colonize your soil. So let's talk about how to apply it in your garden for maximum effect. In a backyard garden, I usually dilute this starter at a 1:10 ratio with water, then pour it directly around the root zone of vegetables. For raised beds, I often soak the soil lightly with this mixture once a week during the early growth stages. Now, if you're working with hydroponics, you can add a few tablespoons per 5-gallon reservoir. It doesn't cloud the water, but it dramatically increases biofilm growth on roots, which improves nutrient uptake. The key here is consistency. Repeated application over 2 to 3 weeks creates a self-sustaining microbial ecosystem that keeps feeding your plants, even without any additional chemical fertilizers. Why does this work better than standard compost or those store-bought microbe teas? Here's the thing. But most people rely on compost teas or pre-packaged microbial products, but honestly, these are pretty hit or miss. Store-bought teas often contain generic microbes that might not even survive in your soil, and well, they rarely come in concentrations high enough to make a noticeable difference. This Korean-inspired fermented method, on the other hand, creates millions of viable microbes in a highly digestible form for soil life. Earthworms, beneficial nematodes, fungi, all of them absolutely feast on it. I've actually seen worm populations double in just 2 to 3 weeks, and that translates directly into deeper, healthier root systems. Here's a tip most gardeners overlook: monitoring soil temperature and moisture really matters. Even with a perfect microbial starter, your soil conditions need to support life. Too dry and microbes just slow down. Too wet and anaerobic conditions can kill them off. I use a heavy-duty compost thermometer to check soil temperature and make sure my raised beds stay in the 65 to 80 degree Fahrenheit range, which is, optimal for microbial reproduction. For moisture, I don't just rely on feeling. Nope, I monitor soil consistently, adjusting irrigation to maintain slightly damp, not soggy conditions. You can find a link to the compost thermometer I use in the description. Honestly, this is the kind of small investment that gives huge returns in soil health. Why patience beats over-fertilizing every time. One mistake gardeners make is expecting overnight results. Even though this method accelerates soil life, you're not going to triple harvests in a week. What you will see is the soil structure improving, worms returning, and early root growth far stronger than anything you'd get from chemical spikes. After the first 2 to 3 applications, you'll notice plants are less prone to disease, leaves are greener naturally, and fruits taste more flavorful. That's really the payoff of working with soil life instead of against it. How to scale this up for larger plots or hydroponic systems? For larger backyard gardens, I increase the starter proportionally but keep the same fermentation process. For a 4 by 8 foot raised bed, I use roughly 5 cups of rice, 2.5 cups of soybean meal, and 1 cup of mineral powder, fermented in a 5-gallon bucket. In hydroponics, the liquid starter can be diluted directly into the reservoir weekly. The principles stay the same. Feed the microbes, maintain proper moisture and temperature, and let nature do the rest. The difference is honestly obvious when comparing beds treated this way versus conventional fertilized beds. They're consistently more productive, with deeper roots and healthier foliage. Let's talk about common mistakes that can ruin this method. The biggest mistake is letting the fermentation go anaerobic, basically sealing the mixture too tightly or not stirring at all. That produces foul odors and kills most beneficial microbes. Another mistake is overwatering when applying to soil. Too much water just flushes the microbes and reduces their effect. Finally, don't expect chemical fertilizers to synergize with this method immediately. If you continue heavy chemical use, you'll kill the very life you're trying to cultivate. For best results, reduce synthetic fertilizers gradually as your soil life improves. Why fertilizer companies aren't thrilled about this? Honestly, this is exactly why fertilizer companies stay quiet about these methods. A few cups of fermented rice and soybean meal can replace multiple applications of chemical fertilizers, and anyone can do it at home. It's inexpensive, effective, and scalable, which really threatens the business model of expensive soil chemicals. The good news is you don't have to worry about that. You can quietly transform your soil without buying into the hype. So, just wrapping it up and talking about next steps for your garden. If you take anything from this video, remember that thriving soil starts with life, not nutrients. Use this Korean-inspired fermentation technique consistently. Monitor your soil with a good thermometer and adjust moisture carefully. Over time, your raised beds, backyard plots, and even hydroponic systems will show the difference in root depth, plant health, and flavor. Before I go, if you want tools like the heavy-duty compost thermometer I mentioned, check the description. This one has been indispensable in my garden for years. And if you're serious about growing better food, hit subscribe to Farm Logic and share this video with other gardeners. The more you work with soil life instead of chemicals, the more rewarding your garden will be. Stay practical, stay hands-on, and watch your backyard transform into a thriving living ecosystem.